Hey everyone, good to see you this afternoon. So today we're going to go over our third portion of our course, and we're specifically getting into the shower faucet system. So thanks everyone much for joining me. Thanks for all the new subscribers on this channel. As you can see, I got some headsets, so hopefully the volume and things sound better. Let's make sure that my volume, yes, okay, it looks like it's recording. I'm getting used to all this new technology. I've been a contractor for 22 years, so I've been primarily working with my hands. So a lot of this stuff is a little bit new to me. But thanks very much for joining me. If you're on the way in here, if you can give me a like on this video, really helps out. In these next 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to go over about the course and how it's all laid out. So if you've already been on my channel before and you see these live streams, feel free to skip through another 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and then we'll be getting into the actual core information here. But really this is my bread and butter of how I'm trying to bring in revenue to be able to continue to put these videos together. And I have a lot of stuff coming out here shortly. I've been working nonstop trying to edit them. It's just a matter of me sitting in front of this computer long enough to continue doing them. But our next bathroom that I'm starting, if you guys are following on my channel, I have a lot of great stuff coming out. Some mistakes that I've made and showing how to correct them. So I really feel like teaching in a lot of ways. 2 ways to go about it. You can be shown, hey, obviously you want to share the proper ways of doing things, but if you make a mistake, I think you can learn a lot better from that, because a lot of times I think that's why people come out on YouTube trying to find information, is they get into a project like this, they get overwhelmed, they're stuck on something, and they're trying to search for things. So that's what this whole channel is. You can't hear me. Oh boy. See, my microphone is recording here. Thanks, Shannon. I don't know why that wouldn't be. Oh boy. Well, hopefully I hope I hope that's not a delayed response, because I didn't have any volume at the beginning. Let me see. Oh, okay. Never mind. That might have been an earlier message you had there. You can't hear me either. Steve Logson. Okay. What is going on here? I can hear it on mine. Okay. All right. So, honestly, at the beginning of the video, sorry guys, I didn't have my volume on that beginning portion of it. So maybe I was just kind of running things through. I have my volume totally up. Let me see if I can turn this up. Okay. Is that any better? Sorry guys. It is a bit quiet. All right, so let me see sorry guys. Technology, system preferences. Let me see here. Sound. How did I do that? Hopefully, I might have to start this live stream over again if I can't get this to work. I can hear, but volume is really low. Okay, all right, let me see. Where are my settings on this? I can't remember how I got into that. Multifunction. Oh, you know what it was? It was over here. Okay, let me see where. So I go into multi-devices, and I think my Rode mic. No. Black hole. Let me see if my volume. Microphone. You're cool now? Okay. All right. Sorry guys, I hate, I might try to cut that part of this video out, because really the whole idea of doing these live streams is not only communicate with you guys. Okay, thanks Greg. All right, yeah, I must have just had the volume down too much. Okay, great. I'll have to check out, make sure my levels are a little bit higher, because I have it all the way turned up on my mic, but I might cut out that portion, because really I'm doing these live streams to provide a way for people to watch this course, look through it, because I know like bathroom remodeling, you really do have to plan quite a bit ahead, not just because of the amount of money it costs to do, but you might not, I mean, if you're a DIYer, this could be an overwhelming process to get into. So I know a lot of times it might take you months before you wrap your head around getting enough time to be able to do this, and making sure that you're capable of doing it. So I always wanted to make sure that I have this course put on my YouTube channel, which let me just show you that here. So on my YouTube channel, you'll be able to find all of these basically under my playlist. So I have it underneath Tiled Walk-in Shower Online course, and in there you can see I have let me shrink myself down here. Boy, I'm having all types of difficulties today here. So yeah, all 3 of them are going to be here for you to be able to view. So I really wanted to make this accessible to anybody, whether they purchase into the course or not. So that's really my main driver of showing this. And plus, I have a paywall. Obviously, if you want to buy the course, it's gonna, I am charging a fee for this, and a lot of that is going to be just access to me, because you can ask me questions and I can help you out with things, and it's going to help my platform move forward. And I think you'll find in this course that a lot of it's going to be a lot of additional helpful information. It just makes it easier than being on here on YouTube and trying to, you get distracted. I know when I'm on YouTube, I got other creators dinging me, and it seems like my attention span on YouTube is maybe 5-10 minutes at most on each video, and then you're on to something else. Whereas if I had a course layout like I've developed here, if I was learning something, a lot of this technology stuff I've learned through different avenues on YouTube channels, but also courses and stuff. And when you're in a course environment, like, you don't have all those distractions, and I think it really makes a big difference. So anyways, let's look at my tiled walk-in shower here. This is what the course is going to be. I've got the checkout page. So basically, we're walking through the entire process of installing this. So we got going from the framing, which we've already gone over, moving the shower drain, which was our last live stream. The shower faucet is what we're going to get in today. So with a handheld, I know most people want handhelds with their shower faucets. And then we might get into a little bit of waterproofing today, depending on your questions. So if you have questions, be sure to ask them in the chat. We can pause and go over some things. But really, the shower faucet is going to take a bit of time, because there's a lot of details in here that are important to plan ahead on and know. And yeah, so we'll get into that. And then the rest of the course is really getting into the tiling, which would be the fun part of the project, tiling the curb. And then, in this shower, I did glass shelving, so I could just show you some simple tips on that. I really do think the shelving installations really makes everything a lot faster. The recessed niches are beautiful, the recessed niches with, but it takes a lot more time to tile that. And if you're a new beginner into tiling, I'm not trying to steer you away from that, but just know that those usually take a lot more time, and there's a lot more room for error when it comes to tiling around a niche. Whereas the shelving, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, and it does provide a lot of additional utility to your shower. And then I have a thing on the shower glass doors. But really, what I'm really excited about this course, and like I said, keeps you focused, is having it in a curriculum form, step by step, and then having a lot of additional information within here that I have a lot of different write-ups on. So, all right, thanks, Steve, for all your input there. I'm sorry, I do need to turn up the volume. I just don't know how to do that right now, so I will, yeah. So, Gene, yeah, you could definitely email me. If you buy the course, you can definitely send me pictures. When you look into my course, let me go up to what this looks like as a student. Okay, we're in the student form. So when you get into the course, you're going to see, each part is laid out here on the left-hand side of the curriculum. So you can go step by step. And what is awesome about Teachable is that they actually have a little indicator showing you whether you went through it or not. Let me get that little logo off there. And so you can just go back to exactly where you left off pretty easily by those markers. But I basically have everything laid out from the beginning of the demo to the process of going through this. But for instance, when we get into this rough-in valve installation, you'll always be able to scroll down to the bottom. we'll go through these pictures here shortly, but these are just kind of reminders. I always like to have imagery to show different parts of the system of what we're installing, just so that you don't have to watch a video over again. You could just go through the highlights and make sure that you're getting what you need. But what I'm saying is here, as far as Gene's question is, you can always leave me a comment down here, leave a picture, and then I always have my email contact within this as well. Email sometimes is better. So, and yeah, Greg, no, it's just a one-time payment. I'm not doing into any subscription thing. I feel that the value that I provide in here, really, I mean, in my mind, I feel like back in the day when you were looking to learn something, you would buy a CD or a DVD for $30-40, and there was no additional thing. So that's kind of where my model is. Well, I don't want to get into the subscription thing. I'm always going to be here to answer questions and help out, but if things get overwhelming, I get a lot of people joining the course, and it's a workload that I can't get to everyone, then I might be providing some coaching services where, if you pay for the service, I can get into a little more detail. But I actually want to do that regardless in a lot of ways, because I think doing some FaceTime interaction, seeing your space, providing better information that way is something that I think can be really helpful. But right now, I'm just still overwhelmed with the amount of editing into all these videos, and so it's we're getting there. But maybe towards the end of the year, I can offer some coaching service and stuff. But yeah, to answer your questions, it's just a one-time payment. It's only this shower course is only $40. It's just more or less of supporting the platform. And then if you're watching here on YouTube, obviously the ad revenue comes in, helps me out. And then all the links that I have within this are some of them are affiliate links, some of them are just places to go to buy this stuff. So, but first, before we get into the rough-in valve installation, I want to give you a little bit of motivation of what a contractor might charge for something. So this was the quote that I gave the client last year, June 6, 2021. So keep that with a grain of salt. Prices are going up. Obviously, things are costing more right now. So I could probably add 10% to this pretty easily. But I'm not going to go through everything. But basically, this was just a 4x8 bathroom with basically a 3x4 shower in it. But I wanted to go over the plumbing and underlayments that I had quoted for this. Now, I quoted Schluter originally because I was thinking about going that way. And then I decided last minute I wanted to do the Weedy system. And I'll have to say, those two systems are great systems. You can't go wrong with either one. I just personally feel that the Weedy is faster and it's a little bit easier for a DIYer, just because it's kind of foolproof in a lot of ways. You're doing a sealant application versus Thinset application. There's a lot of problems, and I always try to go, make sure that people understand what the problems are with Schluter, and it really always comes down to the Thinset mixture. So if it's too dry, the Curdy band doesn't want to bond correctly, and you can just end up with a lot of issues. So it takes a little bit more skill, I would say, in some ways to install Schluter, but it also really provides a great way if you don't know where your drain is specifically in your shower. It is more flexible as far as cutting down, and ultimately the pans for the Schluter system are cheaper and are more easily modified, I should say. So there are some real benefits to a beginner using Schluter, because you can cut that pan down. You can screw up 6 inches and still be able to make it work. Whereas the Weedy system, even if you're a ½ inch off of your measurement and you miscut that pan, you're kind of screwed. You have to there's ways out of it. There's that you can also do a banding type of seam tape over a mistake, but really the what makes Weedy fast is using the sealant application, sliding it into the dado or the rabbet joint of the pan, and really that pan has to fit pretty nicely and tight into the space. So anyways, my point being is that I quoted for Schluter. I ended up using Weedy. But a lot of times I evaluate the cost of the waterproofing the same, whether it's Weedy or Schluter. Now, Schluter will cost me less overall to buy the system, but Weedy speeds up the process, so I kind of charge the same amount. I charge about, as of right now, this is 2022, it might date this entire video in some ways, but I usually account for about $1,100 for a waterproofing system for basically a 3x4 shower system. And that's having waterproofing board all the way up to the ceiling. It includes a curb The curbless system is going to cost you a little bit more because those pans are a little bit more expensive. Yeah, so I really account for about $1,100, and that doesn't matter whether it's Schluter or not. Schluter will probably cost me around $800 potentially, and that's including the Thinset for setting the pan, and then any membranes that you're putting on as well. I believe the Weedy system literally did cost $1,100, so I go to the most expensive price. And then we're going to be showing you this Delta multi-shower system. This is made by Delta, this Monitor 17. This is really not a bad price for having everything except for the valves. And we'll get into that here shortly, but the valves, the actual roughened valves that actually turn off and on the water are not included in this price. So you better add on another $100 pretty easily to this price. So it's about $700 for the shower faucet system. So that's what I have incorporated into this bid. So we're roughly talking $1,800 of actual material. I charge $3,200. That kind of gives me a little bit of wiggle room with, if I had to get additional parts or whatnot. And it leaves me about, this will take me 2 days. I pretty much, and I wouldn't even say full days. Again, like I'm experienced. I've done lots and lots of bathrooms. So, I am fairly quick at installing these things because I have a method and a pattern of going about it. And that's basically what I'm trying to share with all of you within this course. But, basically it would take me at the most 2 days to do the installing the shower system, the faucet system, and then waterproofing, and then being able to tile on that third day. So you can kind of add that up. That's about $700 a day. I probably don't even put an 8-hour day in doing that. So, it's about $100 an hour. Now, give or take, depending on where you live. This is Pittsburgh, so, I could charge you way more being in New York or LA or whatnot, but there's usually a fairly wide spread. So that will give you some motivation to be able to do some of this yourself. You're going to be able to save yourself at least $1,000 at the very minimum by installing your own waterproofing system and installing that shower faucet. And you'll find that the system that I like to use, or the way I go about installing this faucet, really does make it easy. So in the description of this video, I have a guide, and this also goes along with my course. I have a guide that you can download or just view on your desktop or phone, and basically it's a guide on curbed showers. So I give all my recommendations. We went over this in previous videos, so I'm not going to go through everything, but it's basically highlighting some important details that you want to think about when doing a curb shower, making sure your distances are correct. And then I go into the pros and cons of each type of system, whether you're going to do a mud bed, a foam base. I even talk about the rubber liner, which I don't think anybody really wants to use anymore, and I don't recommend it. I have that information in here as well. And then I have a bunch of links to different systems that I like to use and what I've been using over the years. So I have I've put a lot of time into this guide. It doesn't cost anything. You don't have to buy the course to do it. You could just, like I said, it's in the description of this video, and you can download it and check it out. But just really complements the course well, just so that if you want to look at different choices, you can. But I have a shower faucet system basically recommendation in here. So the first thing I think you should ask yourself is, where is your valve going to be? Is it going to be in a wall that you have access to? If you don't have access to it, a lot of walk-in showers, especially master bathrooms, they're usually back to back from another main bathroom. So there's no access to the actual valve. So in that case, you're going to want to have a shutoff to your actual faucet. So they sell the valves with the integral shutoff. So you have to take the valve trim off, but you want to have something that shuts the actual valve off just in case that cartridge ever went bad or ever had a problem with anything. You don't want to have to shut off your whole, all the water in your home and then have to put a shut-off valve somewhere to be able to do that. So if it's at most showers, I'm always just buying the integral shutoffs, and that has these little, basically integral shutoffs here that you can shut off at the valve. I really don't buy anything else for the most part unless the client has bought something and didn't have one. And then sometimes I just go ahead and put that in. But you really do want to have a shutoff valve to each fixture in your bathroom. So obviously your sinks are going to have their own shutoffs. Your toilet's going to have one, and you're going to want one for your shower valve. So pay attention to your configuration. If you don't have a basement that, you know, you can shut off the water to, you're going to want to get the integral valves. The second thing you want to pay attention to is, what are you adapting to? Most of the time, you guys are going to have copper. You're going to be adapting to copper. If you have access, this goes into my third thing to look at, is like, do you have the skills and tools, and do you even want to do any soldering? You know, that's something that you wouldn't be able to say 15 years ago, because almost everything was soldered, or you had to get into that type of skill level to do anything. But that doesn't mean that you have to go that way, especially with all the newer shark bite fittings. Plumbers kind of cringe at that idea. But if you have access to a shutoff valve, you can just simply put on a shark bite shutoff on your existing copper. And I think as long as it's accessible, most places are, you're allowed to use those. And personally, I've never had a problem with a shark bite ever. I mean, the only thing I don't like about it is the price. I mean, they're very, very expensive. They're 3-4 times of what a normal valve would cost. So you don't have to solder, and we're going to get into that here as well. I do some soldering in this course, but in this situation where the bathroom was at, you pretty much kind of had to adapt to copper in that way, using the solder, because it was in a closed off space and there was no access, and I'm in an area that requires or does not allow shark bites to even be used, which hopefully it changed someday. There was if you guys ever watch what's it called, the Build Show, Matt Risinger, he has a big YouTube channel. He did a bunch of things on shark bites and showing when they freeze and the amount of strength that they have. I don't know. I have some pretty significant confidence in shark bites. I think they're great, but you don't want to do anything against your own local code. So any of this advice that I'm showing here, this is just a demonstration of how I've done it. So take this with a grain of salt, because each township, each area, they have their own rules, and some places you're not even allowed to touch your own plumbing at all. So be aware of that. And but again, you want to pay attention to the type of water supplies that you do have, and then know what you're adapting to and how you're going to go about that. So in this image here, we're going to get more into the rough-in valves as well, but this one here already is set up for PEX. I think the PEX B is the easiest way to go. It's the most inexpensive way as well in a lot of ways, and in some ways it's just really foolproof, but you'll see that in the video of how we install it. But I have a recommendation. I mean, Delta, I've always been really happy with. Very easy to install, very easy to set your depth into the wall. So I really highly recommend Delta. And I don't think they've changed these valves or these cartridges. I mean, maybe they changed the cartridges, but the actual valve body, the universal valve body that basically has all of their trims and cartridges that fit into this, I don't think they've changed that in 20 years. It's been the same thing since then. So in that respect, I like that, because you're not worried about them discontinuing something. Mowing, another great choice. Can't go wrong with that. These have the integral shutoffs. So Mowing's always been in my mind, a good company, good customer service. The Growie shower valve. This is Growie, Grohe. I believe American Standard owns them now, but that's another system. Not too bad. It has a lot of different unique trims and stuff to it, so I like that. They also have it, adapting to PEX here. I have some recommendations on the fittings that you would need, and this is also included in my course. The next one that I really like, and I love installing these, are the Growie, and it's the iBox. These are awesome because you can really waterproof to this really, really well. And Growie really is a higher end model, and they're definitely really well made, and you'll even feel like the valve that you actually pick up are just like, holy cow, it weighs like 3 pounds. But I really love these systems because you can waterproof directly to the box, and it really just makes a nice good seal. Growie does that as well, so I like using Growie because this Growflex valve, I like being able to waterproof everything. I always hated just having the escutcheon plates keeping the water out. You're spending all this money on all this waterproofing, and then if water gets behind your shower valve, then the whole system kind of falls apart. So there's a lot of ways out of that. When you're doing a Schluter system, when you're doing a Weedy system, you put those valve seals around there, but this is kind of bulletproof. When you're doing pecs, drop your elbows. So I'm just kind of highlighting what that is. And then inside in this guide, I basically have all the links to the different systems that I recommend. So you can check that out. Some of them are Amazon links. Some will go to the build.com, which is a place I like to purchase. And I just have a general supply list that you would probably want to have on hand when you're doing this. And again, if you don't want to get into soldering, it's not something that's absolutely necessary, but in a lot of situations you kind of do. So that's in the guide. So definitely download that if you're interested. And so we're going to get into this course. So go back to Teachable here. And then, okay. Less than $5,000. That's awesome, Steve. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, that's not bad. That's relatively what this shower pretty much ran. I'll have to go through it, but that whole bathroom was a basically a $14,000 bathroom, and roughly $6,000 worth of material. And that's with the vanity, the toilet, the tile, the waterproofing system, this Delta faucet. So that's good, man. That's not a bad price. Okay. Thanks, Josh. Thanks for the shout out on that. I really appreciate that. You definitely helped continue the comment, and everything's in here, so thanks so much. But let's get into this actual course. So hopefully the volume on this works. No, I guess start it all over again. Where's... Yep. Okay. Okay. What's going on? I really highly recommend. It comes with a pressure balance. In this custom shower build, I'm going to demonstrate how to install the Delta Monitor 17 series shower faucet that I really highly recommend. It comes with a pressure balanced shower valve that includes 2 levers, one for volume, one for temperature, a handheld unit with the diverter valve to the shower head. Okay, so let's go ahead and take our Shark Bite caps off here. And we'll cut this back into the wall. Let me know if the volume's okay. Okay, so you want to make sure you sand this up. Okay, so we're going to use our flux paste, and we're going to be soldering with our Odie solder here. So just make sure you sand all your fittings and your copper pipe. And just dab. Okay, and wipe off any excess flux after you do that. And then what we'll do is put one of these adapters on here. Just make sure that flux is on every part of that copper. If you miss any of the flux, it will definitely, most likely not get the solder into that joint. Okay, so just heat the fitting. Basically just want to have the solder going all the way around the joint. I'm going to take a rag. Clean it up. And using that MAP gas really makes a big difference too. It heats up that joint a lot faster. And then again, you're just heating the fitting and then just trying to clean up that solder around it. You don't need a lot of solder really. I think the rule of thumb is basically the width of your copper. Just have that much solder coming out to go around it. So okay, so this one's pretty tight back here. It's going to be really tough to show any indication what I'm doing here, but sometimes it's pretty tight. Find some places, but just want to sand up your copper. Those auto cut tools are awesome for tight spaces like that. Hey Gene, we'll be getting into that. What we want to use is the Pro Crimps, and these things are really nice because What I would do on the blue. So when you put this on here, when you take this cap off, it keeps it at the right distance because you always want to have about a 16th inch of space of that PEX showing on the other side of the crimp ring. So this just really helps out in keeping it at the right location. It's the simple things that speed things up. So we'll put an elbow on here. It does cost a little bit more for this, but it's such a pain trying to make sure that that crimp stays at the right place, and those things really make a big difference. You always want to check your no-go gauge on your fittings. And that honestly just keeps you from missing a joint. There's so many times that that you can miss a joint by just forgetting to crimp it, and that turns into a real mess, as you can imagine. So getting in the habit of constantly checking those crimps forces you to know whether you did it or not. Okay, so this is going to be our Delta shower valve. Is it reading it? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And this is specifically made for a shower because this is the bottom port is capped where you would normally have a tub spout. So I get rid of this. This doesn't really help me out. This is a gauge to tell you the difference between your plaster guard basically will tell you the depth that you need to be. But on a Delta valve, if you just have it on a 2x4, even with the back of a 2x4 stud, you'll be in the right location up to about a 1/2 inch tile. So you have 1/2 inch backer board, and then if you had 1/2 inch tile, you'll still be set in the right location. If you have some thicker tile, you're going to probably have to go back a little bit further. So what I got So Gene, you were asking me here in the comments about the thickness, what to apply for Thinset. It really depends on the tile that you're installing, and if you keep your wall nice and flat, that's one of the things I highlight in the framing section of this course. If you make sure that your wall is all nice in line with one another, then you can end up it being pretty easily dependable on what the thickness of Thinset will be. So typically, like on a 12 by 24 inch tile, you would probably be about an 1/8 inch to 3/16 inch of thickness of Thinset. So you might be about an inch overall. So if you had 3/8 inch tile, and you had the Thinset layer of an 1/8 inch to 3/16 plus the 1/2 inch backer board, you're about an inch and a 1/16. That Delta valve, if you set that 2 inches back from and this is most valves. I mean, really, it's not even just Delta. Moen's about the same. Kohler's about the same. There's a couple other systems that, like the Hans Growie iBox and some of these other ones, they're a little bit different. But majority of the time, if you have a 2x4, 2 inches back from your rough-in framing as blocking goes, that gives you enough room. And a lot of these valves have a plus or minus 1/4 inch in difference in depth. So if you put that Delta valve directly back on a 2x4 that's 2 inches back from your studs, which is basically just making it like a 2x6 or a 2x8 flat with the back of the 2x4 wall, you're going to be fine with probably anything that you install. I mean, unless you went with slate, unless you're going with something that's really thick, a normal tile installation, I've never had an issue. The only time I've had an issue is if you had like a thin wall. A lot of these old homes, sometimes they would have especially in the 1930s or something, sometimes they would have a wall that they would just put the studs flat ways to save room for some stupid reason. But they would have plaster and lath and everything on it. So you'd be about a 2 inch deep wall. In that case, that can be problematic. The only time I really ever had an issue is when the valve is too far out, and then you can't do anything. But those screws that you, especially on the Delta valve, they're about 2 inches long. So you're going to be able to grab that valve one way or other. So don't stress out too much about the depth, but really, if you're between an inch, inch and a quarter, inch and a half of thickness with your wall board, putting that 2x4 in the back is just going to be fine. So, all right, let me shrink it down here, and hopefully that answered your questions, Gene. But yeah, that's really, I might even have, I can't remember if I have that in this video or not. I might. Since I knew I was going to be really tight against the stud and the cement pipe,
were a couple of these fittings. They're female adapter, swivel adapters.
These are nice.
And it adapts to pecs. So it has a rubber grommet in there, and you can just thread these on.
Pretty foolproof.
But let me give you some Teflon tape.
Great with tight spaces like this. Because a lot of,
So
in this particular one, I didn't have any real room on my left side, so.
About 3 to 4 revolutions of Teflon tape.
Always run that clockwise so that when you're threading on the fitting, it's tightening with it.
And these are just really simple. You just tighten them on like you would any other type of supply line, yeah.
So with those rubber grommets, I wouldn't use the pipe sealant. You'll see my top port, I'll do the pipe sealant.
So you just screw these on like any other supply line. And this rubber gasket in here will pretty much make it really watertight. Okay. And then off the top, we're going to use just a standard female 1/2 inch adapter to pecs. So you want to put some Teflon tape on this. Usually 4 to 5 revolutions is enough. Try to keep it flat and go clockwise with it so that when you tighten this, you want to just use a little bit of pipe sealant as well for the fitting without the rubber grommet. Since this doesn't have a rubber grommet on it, I want to put a little bit of paste. Okay, so then we're just going to butt this straight up against here. So let's try to get our pecs up here first.
This is what's nice about pecs. If this was copper, this would be a nightmare. You'd have so many different fittings you're trying to solder together to get things over properly.
This is so tight, we're going to go ahead and crimp this first. So let's see what we got here. So we got 19. That's about as good as it's going to get, because otherwise I'm going to have to cut that whole stud out and then I won't have any support. So, sometimes you just get as close as you can. I don't think anybody's going to really notice an inch. We're going to be 36, so we'll be 1 inch off the center off of that, but we'll just have to accept that.
And that was basically because I have a vent stack, if you see right here, going right up against that stud. So there was really no alternative. And when you're framing, which, review that other video that I had on the framing, you want to make sure that your studs are at least 16 inches on center for the backer board. That's a requirement of most of them. So we really had no choice but to have that stud right up against that vent stack. And that's what made all this tighter. So, but those swivel connectors are pretty awesome, really easy, kind of foolproof. I mean, with that rubber gasket, it's kind of like connecting a regular sink faucet to it, so it should be in good shape. But again, I can't vouch that that's acceptable in every area, because there's a lot of goofy rules out there when it comes to plumbing. So some areas might not even. So I think some places don't even allow pecs at all still, which I think is ridiculous. I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's really certainly saved me a lot of money, saved me a lot of headache. It saves a lot of time too.
Universal rough delta, and basically this guy is going to be our diverter valve. So make sure you have the up location here. This is going to be your shower port. And then if you only have 2 functions like we're going to have, we're just going to have a handheld and a shower head, you want to cap this side. So we'll go ahead and put all our adapters on here first before we set it in place. So once again, clockwise with your Teflon tape, try to keep it flat, 4 to 5 revolutions around each threaded fitting.
So yeah, just using that Teflon tape, adding the pipe sealant. Make sure that Teflon tape's going clockwise, though. You really want to make sure that that's clockwise. I don't know if there's S.
Okay, so our up arrow, there it is, going up. So we'll just plug the right side.
This is really the easiest way to go about that.
Side because of that 2x4. So I'm gonna put a drop ear elbow on here.
Thanks, George. Now I use a drop ear elbow.
So I'm gonna cut off part of this ear elbow. This sits flat on here. So typically.
Yeah, I didn't really like that I had to do that, but I wasn't going to run out to Home Depot again to get another swivel adapter. And honestly, I should have all these different things. But that's where this course is going to help you out, because you'll be able to plan ahead on this and make sure that you have all the fittings. But that drop ear elbow was totally fine. It just looks kind of ugly. It would have been better to have something that didn't have, the screw holes on there. And really the swivel adapter would have been easier anyways in a lot of ways, and that's just to get the port over for the handheld. So plan ahead. Use my course to get the right fittings and have them on hand. So because going out to Home Depot every day, Lowe's for every day, it's just definitely going to take you a lot longer to get this project done. And that's what it's all about, is saving time.
I usually go about 8 to 10 inches in between these two valves. It's really personal preference of where you want to go with this, but I'm just going to go 8 inches. Just have to make sure there's enough room for the escutcheon plates, that's all. Even this up with this one.
Some guys use copper in between there. It makes it more rigid. It's not a bad idea.
Okay, so this is just a little test plug made out of a 1/2 inch male adapter. So this allows me to pressure test everything, and also helps me measure to the distance here. So I like to put these in before screwing it in.
And you can make those pretty easy out of a stub out and just a male threading. I have that stuff down below as well. That's if you're going to get into soldering, though. Like I said, you don't have to do soldering.
For our handheld on here. Okay, then this guy, usually you don't want to have it much more than 3 inches closer to the wall, because you need room to thread on the port. So I would say a minimum of 3 inches from the wall. That's typically where I just set it, as 3 inches centered. Because remember, you're going to have 1/2 inch backer board, and then by the time you're thin set and tile, you'll have 3/8 of an inch. So you'll have almost an inch. So you'll be literally 2 inches away from the wall, and you need some room to screw that in. So if you want to be safe, maybe just even go 3.5 inches away from the wall, so that you have plenty of room. It depends on the adapter that goes on. Some of them are square and big and bulky, so they take up a lot of room to thread on, and other ones are really small. So just pay attention to what adapter you have.
So yeah, that's a very important highlight. Don't get it too close to the wall. Gene, especially, like you were asking about the thickness of tile, that all goes into this as well in that back wall, because most likely, if you're using 3/8 inch tile, apply an 1/8 inch of Thinset, give or take. It could even be a 1/4 inch, depending on if your wall's flat or not. Because if you might have to build up additional Thinset to get everything to line up correctly. So give yourself some room. 3 to 4 inches away from that sidewall. I like to have it close to the wall though. I mean, obviously not too close. You want to get that port on there, but I like it being in that corner because then the hose just kind of hangs down and it's kind of out of the way. Whereas if you kind of put the port up above where your handheld device will be, the hose kind of gets all caught up. So typically I go about 60 inches off the floor for where that port is located. And as you can see, I have a 2x6 and then some 1/2 inch material behind that. So basically I'm setting my blocking 1.5 inches behind the rough in framing, because basically most of these, now again, this really depends on what the system you're installing. In my experience, most of the time you need to have the brass nipple that comes out of the tile work come out between no more than 1/2 inch out and in no less than 1/4 inch out. So if it's recessed in, you obviously can't hook the handheld to it. If you're out too far, you're going to have a problem with the handheld part sticking out, which is really, really painful. But there's ways out of it. If you leave this back 1.5 inches, and this is I go into the framing portion of this as well. But if you in this scenario for Delta, Moen, a lot of these main brands that have just standard ports that are kind of flush on the back, you can pretty much just plan to go 1.5 inches behind that wall, and that will bring a PEX nipple almost flush with the front of it. Not quite flush, about 1/4 inch back. So then typically when you thread in your brass nipple, it goes into the port about 3/8 to 1/2 inch. So just call it 1/2 inch. So you got 1/2 inch, and then you got your backer board, which is gonna with the tile, which is basically about 1 inch, and then so that gives you 1.5 inches, and then usually a 2-inch brass nipple works fine. Now if you have too much thinset, the 2.5 inch brass nipple works as well. So that's kind of where my math comes from as far as the depth goes, as far as how far back from that wall you want to be. But obviously you really want to know the thickness of your tile, the thickness of your backer board to gauge that. And also know if you really turn into a problem where you're needing like 1 inch brass nipple, you can go to your local hardware store and have them make it specifically for that. There are ways out of because most of the time when you get these brass nipples, they're every 1/2 inch increment, 1.5 inch, 2 inch, 2.5 inches, 3 inch. But in my toolbox, I always have a 2 inch and a 2.5 inch brass nipple for finishing day, because those are typically the two most common ones if you have this blocking set in that proper depth. Now in my upcoming videos, I will be having something about these Amazon valves that everyone are installing. And those things are so critical for where you set these ports, or they just won't fit, because they're I'm impressed with the valves that they've come out with, and obviously the cost is like 1/3 of what these other brands are costing. But when it comes to stuff like this, it was really painful and a hard learning lesson as far as where that port goes. So hopefully that helps you out. But yeah, 1.5 inches, having that blocking 1.5 inches back from your front of your stud usually works out great.
So then you can see that my port is basically 1/4 inch recessed from my 2x4, because what we'll have is basically another, like I said, a 1/2 inch backer board and then 1/2 inch tile with the thinset. So we have 1 inch of room, and then you usually want to have the nipple sticking outside of the tile about 1/2 inch. So usually 1.5 inch nipple works for connecting this adapter to it.
That was an
So
2 inch.
you can always go too far in, because you can always keep getting adapters that are longer. You just don't want to be too close. You don't want this protruding outside of your stud space, or you're just not going to have enough. The adapters only go down to about 1 inch. So anything less than that, you're not going to be able to thread on your port. So then what I like to put on this one, it's kind of the same thing, but I just have a hose adapter on it, so then I can get some water up here. And then when I put my backer board and tile, I could just take the shark bite tool and pull that off.
Again, PEX is great. This was a weird scenario with that vent pipe.
Okay, so one important thing to note here is I have some, these are shut-off valves so that if anything went wrong with my cartridge, I can shut off the water to the shower until it gets addressed. That's important if you can't get shut-off valves. This is obviously in a cavity that you're never going to be able to get to, so it's important to have these stops. So pay attention to when you order a valve, and pay attention to your own situation to make sure that you have, if you don't have shut-off valves that you can get to, you're going to want to get these ones with the stops. Okay, so turn on the water. Make sure you have pressure to everything. And then one thing about these Delta valves, I have a shower on the other side here. Without the cartridge, it's just going to mix the water. So I would suggest, at the very least, just shutting off the hot water side of this after you test everything. Make sure that nothing's leaking. Look around at each port. But then at least shut off the hot water so it doesn't mix. Because what will happen is it just kind of mixes everything in the house. So I'm just going to shut off the hot water, so then I just have cold water for things. But since there's no cartridge in here, everything just mixes together. So they would probably have a lukewarm shower if I didn't turn off the hot water.
Okay, so yeah, not the most beautiful thing with this drop your elbow, but you know, with a vent pipe in different situations, you know, there's nothing wrong. Just be careful with your PEX. So obviously you don't want to be having any real sharp edges or any like crimping area, because that could be a problematic. But overall, I think this installation went fairly smoothly. Now in my description below, I have the links to this Delta shower valve. I also have that in my guide as well. Like I said, it was about $600, but pay attention to the valves you can get, because you can actually get a rough-in valve that would have PEX all the way around already incorporated into it. So my top valve or my top shower port already having that associated with it. Does cost a little bit more money, about $15 to have that. So I guess, you know, pay attention to that, whether that makes any sense to you or not, to spend the extra $15 to get the valve that works better. But it would make it faster. And if you're a contractor, time is money. Again, paying attention to your shut-off valves, making sure that you have the ability to shut them off. Now, the one thing that they don't have, well, here, you know, I have this in my tub and shower course too. I think these are awesome. Definitely planning on using one of these in the future. But this is awesome. If you have a tub and shower, it already has the copper port already attached to it, so you don't have to do any soldering. You just attach everything with PEX. So, but unfortunately, they don't have anything like that with the Delta system, or, you know, Moen or whatever. But anyways, yeah, that's the I have these other links in here as well, which is also part of the guide. This is the Growie shower system. I really recommend and like, with the handheld unit. I also go into the Kohler rain test. I have this on my YouTube channel, installing this. This is, you can just attach this system onto a standard existing shower faucet, which is kind of nice, because all it does is connect right into your shower port, and then you have your own switch lever for there. But again, it adds up cost. I mean, $530 just for that. I mean, it's a really great system, but it does cost a bit. So then down below, I just like to highlight things just so that you don't have to watch the video over again, just to kind of refresh your memory and make sure that you're going through the proper things. So if you're doing copper adaptation, you want to make sure that you sand and make sure all that copper is really clean. You can't really solder on dirty copper. It won't hold. Make sure you have the flux. Have PEX adapters if you're going to go to PEX, which I definitely recommend. MAP gas, definitely going to speed up the process. Make sure you have lead-free solder. You don't want to be drinking lead. And I tell you what, lead, it was nice to use lead, I have to say. I've been doing this 22 years, and they probably got rid of lead a long time ago, but you would be able to still buy like a 50-50 mix. And one thing about the lead, you would never have a problem with a copper joint or a joint. Like, the lead somehow just kind of really, even if there was a lot of water in the line, you can still heat it up, and it took less heat, and it just always seemed to keep that joint leak free. So lead was nice, but obviously it's not healthy for us. So you want to use lead-free solder. You want to wipe off the excess solder, make your joint look clean, and look a little bit professional. Now, I mean, obviously there's a lot better guys out there, a lot more experienced people than me, and they do a lot, more beautiful work as far as that goes. But yeah, wipe that off with a rag after you're done. And then again, these PEX crimps, highly recommend these. Really saves up time, makes it less frustrating for installing these and making sure that they stay in the right location, because it is important to have that little bit of reveal of the PEX around the fitting. Again, this is just kind of highlighting the Teflon tape, using pipe sealant, these swivel connectors. Don't forget those. I should have probably bought another half dozen of these so I have them in my toolbox. It would have made it nicer to use these for going over my shower port. These tubing cutters, you can't forget this. I think if you're doing PEX, you don't want to be using a utility knife. You want to have nice square cuts. Definitely get a tubing cutter. Have the links below there. Now, as far as the crimpers go, you'll see me always using this rigid. I think it's more accurate. It's easier to use. I don't know. I love rigid tools when it comes to plumbing stuff. These are expensive. So if you're a contractor, I would recommend investing into a good pair of crimpers. But you can always buy these, these shark bite ones. These are not very expensive. I think they're $60, $70, and they do the 3/4. But I don't know. There's something about the way the rigid works. It just seems to have a lot easier time crimping, I guess. I don't know. I just, the shark bite one I was never super happy with, but it'll get the job done. Don't get me wrong. You'll be able to get it, and just always check it with that no-go gauge. So then I have the fittings in here. Separation 8 to 12 inches. That's just kind of a recommendation. I think Delta even suggests that as well. I'm not sure if there really is a limitation to it, but you want to just have enough space for your escutcheon plates and to make it look nice. Because basically I set this valve approximately 48 inches off the floor, and this sits about 60 inches. So, for me, about chest height for the diverter. Shower ports, the old standard used to be 72 inches. I would recommend 82. Everyone's getting taller. The shower heads seem to get bigger. They might drop down further. So 82 inches off your rough end floor. By the time I get the shower floor in, it'll be, probably about 80 inches. I haven't really had any, people that were frustrated with it being too low. If I have a bigger house where it's like a 9-foot ceiling, I might go 84 inches just to give it a little bit more volume. But if you're getting a shower head that you actually need to adjust and by hand, you might want to keep it at this 82-inch mark. These are just highlights of the type of fittings. Using a drop ear elbow, making sure that you cap the side if you're just doing a 2-function on this Delta valve. And then these things are great. These little shark bite hose adapters really help out. So again, here's the information in the tutorial of all the materials that I used in this to help you out. And these little sanding kits actually help out as well. I just bought one of these a couple months ago. I've been using this more. You can put this on an impact drill or a drill and then really sand up that copper nicely. The auto cut tool, definitely highly recommend that. That's a really great tool in places. Get your flame guard. Don't be burning your house down. Get a flame guard behind your plumbing that you're doing, especially in tight spaces. And hey, if you buy the course, you can always leave a comment down, or you can always leave a comment down here as well in the YouTube chat. And I'll probably get around that until my channel grows so much where I can't get to everybody. I'm already starting to feel like that on other social media platforms. Instagram, TikTok. I do try to respond, but I only do that within the first hour because it just becomes crazy. So where are we at here? We're about an hour. That's not too bad. So we might be able to get through 2 sections of the waterproofing on this one. Yeah, I mean, the weedy panels does take up a bit of time, but we're going to be just doing this as a series. So again, go to my YouTube channel. You'll be able to see all portions. Most likely I'll be having a bunch of different parts to this, so maybe like an 8-part series of it. So yeah, let's maybe just get into the drain locations. Let me see if I have any questions here. Gene, thanks so much for enrolling. I appreciate that. Again, if you ever have any questions, make sure you reach out to me. That's why I'm doing this. And really I'm looking for feedback, because honestly, the feedback that everyone provides to me, the more questions you have, maybe things that I'm missing in here, it's just going to make the course that much better. So I want to add different things. I was thinking about my recent shower that I'm working on now, maybe adding the curbless feature into it, but it really does, when you get into curbless, it's almost kind of not a different necessarily tile sequence, but it's a little bit different, and I didn't want to jumble up too much in one course. So I'm not sure if I'm going to do a separate course, or I'm going to add at least the waterproofing system for a curbless shower onto this. I don't know. I still have to debate on what I want to do with it. But I know that not everybody's just going to buy weedy either. They might do a Schluter shower. So I definitely want to incorporate different waterproofing systems. Gene, let me know what you plan to use for your waterproofing system and how you're going to go about it. But I have a lot this summer. I definitely have a lot of work to do to build up this library. I want to do a mud bed system. I want to do a whole bunch of different systems, especially now that we're having a hard time getting materials on all these different things. I mean, this year and most of last year, Curdy board, you couldn't get it. You couldn't get that anywhere. There's just shortages everywhere. So, people aren't going to stick around waiting for this stuff to get their bathrooms done, especially if you have a leak in your shower. I know a lot of these new home builds, not done very well at all with these acrylic bases. The materials get cheaper, they crack, and that's why people are replacing them. So, yeah. So anyways, let's get into the next portion here, because might as well. I try to keep these down to about an hour and a half, so we can get into the first part of the weedy system. And Gene, this might, I don't know what you were going to use, but this might be something that might work for you. My next shower that I'm actually doing next month, I was going to be doing a regular acrylic base, because I think that saves a lot of time. But you can't really beat a tiled shower. I love the look of them. So let's get right into it here.
So you just want to use a toe jam saw or something, but you want to make this flush with the edge of the floor. Okay, so that's nice and flush with the floor. And then just take a utility knife and just deburr anything around the edges. But as long as you get this flush with the floor, then you're nice and even. That's where you want to set the drain. So when I put the pan in, I can just connect to that.
So yeah, that actually wasn't that easy. Obviously, that was sped up a 1000x there. I need a new saw. It's not really working all that great, but most of the time, and I highlighted that in my moving the drain location. But if you're doing a weedy shower system, I recommend you gluing in that riser pipe and then cutting flush with the subfloor. And you can actually go up to an 1/8 inch above. And when we're setting the pan, you'll see why that's important. But if you're doing a Schluter system, I would leave that riser pipe out. I would glue that in afterwards, because the Schluter drain actually drops down below the subfloor, and that becomes a lot more difficult if it's glued in and trying to evaluate where that needs to be. Not impossible, but definitely just a little bit more challenging. So, but with a weedy system, pretty easy. Make it flush. You basically want a 5-inch hole cut around your drain, so keep that in mind. And then, yeah, so I just have that highlighted here below, just the technical sheet from Weedy. So I guess here says 1/2 inch or 1/8 inch above is the max, and then the size hole that you need for it, so 5-inch. These jam saws work well, but if you have an oscillating tool, you can use that as well. You can also use an inside pipe cutter as well, but that's going to be pretty challenging to get flush. So I would either use the oscillating tool or one of these toe jam saws to do that. And then there are better ways of deburring that. You can get a reamer that actually does deburr this properly, but a utility knife is good enough as well. So that's just a real simple highlight there. I wanted to make that separate than the rest of the shower installation, just because if you get to this stage, you want to know immediately, and I just have that highlighted here. So cutting down the pan, the size, this is one of another great features of Weedy. You could really modify this for your shower up to a point. You know, there's limitations, and you know, really, you always got to keep in mind with any of these foam bases, if you cut more than, you know, say 3-6 inches off of each side, that you're going to be lower on that side of the pan than the rest of the perimeter of the shower. Because when you buy these shower pans, they're all the same level all the way around. And as you cut it, because it's 1/4 inch per foot for slope, you're going to be less on one side or the other. So it's just minor details, but it's things you want to pay attention to and know when before you go ahead and start tiling, that, you know, you're going to be lower. Not that it doesn't drain, it'll drain regardless. It's just you're going to be lower on one side or the other depending on how much you cut. In the Weedy system, you're not going to be wanting cutting more than 6 inches off, because these pans just really increase in size and cost per size. So, you know, if you're going to be getting a, you know, a lot of times where you're cutting these things down, you're getting a shower pan for a tub replacement. It's 36 by 60. And so that drain has to be centered on 30 inches. If you can't get that drain centered, I would probably advise going with a different system, because the next size up is going to cost you almost $300 more, because I think the 36 by 72 is about $300 more for that shower pan. And to cut down that much becomes very costly, in some ways not even worth it. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about your deal. So all right, so cutting down the pan, this is very easy. I like to use a table saw. You don't need a table saw to do this, but you'll find that in remodeling in general, having a good table saw is always helpful. It makes everything easier, faster. Shimming everything, you know, like if you were, even if you were doing a regular tub surround, using this to cut down pieces of plywood so that you can fur out different walls and do different things. Trimming, I mean, you name it. The table saw is definitely one of those essential tools if you're doing this all the time. But you don't have to. If you're just doing one bathroom, you don't need a table saw. You can do this with a circular saw, as I demonstrate in this as well.
Okay, so measuring the pan, we had planned for the drain to be using the full width, this 36-inch pan. So it should be 18 inches to the drain. If it's not, you're going to have to adjust, cut your pan to make that fit. So in this instance, we're right on 18, so we're fine there. And let's just get our overall width here. So about 41 and a half. Now you want to make this fairly tight. You don't want to really give yourself any extra room. This needs to be tight against each wall. So 41 and a half is our full width. And it will just measure from one side of the wall to the center. And then we'll mark that on our pan. So in this instance, we have 20 and 5/8. So 20 and 5/8 off of the left side. And on the right side, we have 20 and 3/4. So that's pretty dang close. So 20 and 5/8, 41 and a half width. That's what we're going to do. So let's go down and cut that pan. Okay, so we'll take our pan out. This is a 36 by 48 inch and a half pan, the Weedy Fundo Primo pan. So you can see here, Weedy Primo. Okay, so we said we were going to use the full width, which is 36 inches. So we're going to be using that full depth into the shower. And then from this side, we said 20 and 5/8. So we need to find the center first. So 24 is the center. And then from that center mark, 20 and 5/8. Okay, so we'll just mark this with a square. Okay, so we want cutting that off. So we'll cut that first. Just see what that is here. 3 1/4 inches. Now the easiest way to do this is on a table saw, but you can use a circular saw. There's no problem with using that. Okay, then what you want to do is create this rabbet joint. So we're going to adjust our blade, Okay, so we'll adjust the blade down to that rabbet joint, and then we'll also just slide over our guide, because we basically want to recreate that rabbet joint. And then we got to recreate the side cut. That should work there. So that recreates this nice rabbet joint. Now that was the easiest way to go about it, but you can also use a circular, so I'm going to demonstrate that. So we got 41.5 is our total width. Okay, so we're going to be going over a 1/2 inch for our rabbet joint. Okay, then what I would do is adjust your depth for this cut.
Not sure why I have the trowel in there.
And then just go ahead and cut.
I didn't know that trowel was in there.
Okay, then at this point you can just actually just score with a utility knife. So not as clean with the circular saw, but definitely sufficient for what we need. So now we can go ahead and install our panel. Okay, so we'll go ahead and dry fit this.
You want it to be fairly tight. I mean, it really relies on that rabbet joint with the sealant that we'll be applying in it to work right. So
it's a little tight on this side here.
Yeah. Just gonna move over the wall. But I'd say if you undercut this by a 1/4 inch, you might want to fur out that wall potentially. Again, it does really require a fairly accurate pan installation to make the system work properly.
Okay, so that's all nice and tight. Our drain's pretty centered there. So we're good there. Now we can go ahead and mix our Thinset and get our drain assembly on here. But definitely, you want to have this fairly tight because you really want to make this fairly tight because the boards that come down on the wall are going to join right into this rabbet joint. So you don't want it to be too loose, but you do have a little bit of wiggle room. I mean, if it's a 1/4 inch off, it's not the end of the world, but just try to be as tight as you can. That's all I can really say. So.
Okay, so yeah, wear a respirator too. Obviously I'm trying to instruct here, but man, that installation gets pretty nasty. So yeah, I mean, really 1/4 inch is about all you want. That's where it does take a little bit of accuracy with weedy. And then obviously that drain location kind of has to be spot on. It's not too much different than what an acrylic base would be that you would install in your shower. Those all have to be pretty accurate as well. So, but you can definitely cut this thing down and make it fit. So, Gene, okay, so yeah, if you're doing a curbless shower, great. That's definitely, that's one way to go for sure. So be sure to ask me questions about that. I can definitely help you out. I have a curbless shower that I will be putting out here. I don't know when I'm not sure when that'll be. I don't know. Maybe you'll give me the motivation to get out a detailed video on that. But anyways, weedy instructions are in this as well. Basically everything highlighted. Again, this is just to highlight all of the similar steps of going about this so that you don't have to watch the video over again. Measuring from one side of the drain using a table saw. Basically, this is just going to help you stay on track with cutting this down properly. And then, I'll tell you what, this is probably the best circular saw I ever purchased. I love it. This Makita worm drive saw. Man, it's just, I mean, before when you would buy one of these things, like they would never have the power of a regular circular saw, but this one definitely does. So if you're a tradesman, I love it. I think it's a great saw. Really, really, really something that I use on every single job. So All right, then we'll get into the drain connection probably another time. We're about an hour and 15 minutes. Bob, thanks for stopping in here. Yeah, I am having a problem with the volume, and I can't figure out how to turn that up because now I have headphones on, and I'm trying to make sure I get rid of this echo. So I will get this live stream stuff straightened out. But definitely check out, the course. That's obviously why I'm on here, not only just to help everyone out, but to promote this as well. But, you can have the playlist in YouTube. And if you want to review this, you could always 2x this as well so that you can kind of speed through it. But, yeah, so, I mean, I was going to say, Gene, if you go to my channel, I do have one live stream on a curbless system here that you can check out. So this is a curbless Schluter system that I installed. So this might be something you might want to check out. That's the one I'm going to be editing down and try to make it into a smaller video so that's more thing. But this will probably really help you out. I also did membrane on this one as well. I don't show the membrane installation, but I show at least, I would say if you're doing a curbless system with Schluter, you want to get all your membranes up first. So get that wall board up and get the waterproofing membrane on the walls first, and then set your pan, and then do all the rest of your waterproofing around there. And that's what goes into that demonstration. So we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much for joining me here today. Give me a like on this video, and definitely subscribe and hit that notification bell, because that'll give you the indication of when I do live streams next. So think about any questions you have. Again, this is all about trying to interact with the community on here, and I love seeing that everything's growing so quickly on the channel. It really keeps me motivated and continue to teach, learn, and improve my methods of explaining things as well. So have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much.